Two.
Let's fire this up again. Okay. Let's try it again. We're going live here, so welcome to Keeping It Real. And for this episode, we're relaunching the Keeping It Real episodes. We're going to change up the format a little bit, so we're going to feature some people who are new to the real estate industry, as well as our veterans, like we have on here, Lisa. We're going to have all sorts of success stories from people at all stages of their business. So I'm really excited about that. Heard from a lot of folks that this was some really excellent content, and they were missing it. So I'm happy to get them fired up again. My name's Kevin McCarthy, and I'm the co-founder of Real Geeks. And we have on here my co-host, Todd Tramonte. So I've asked him to help me co-host these episodes. Todd is a top agent here in the DFW area, and he's built his team around providing top-notch value. We also have on our guest here, Lisa Chinatti. So she's been on, I actually just went back and watched all of her old episodes, and it's funny, she's actually been on every year for the last 3 years. So this is her fourth appearance on the show, once a year, and it's been really fantastic to see her growth as she goes through beginning agent, her first year doing 8 deals, up to 82, up to 200. I'll let her say where she's at now, but she truly has an inspiring story, so it's really fantastic to be able to follow her career. If you want to see old episodes of Keeping It Real, go to keepingitreal.com, and you can put in your email and you can get notified of new episodes that come out. Also, you can go to Facebook and you can see episodes there. And also, we post all episodes on our blog at realgeeks.com. So with no further ado, I'd like to kick this off with Lisa. So Lisa, can you just tell us what you've been up to since we talked to you last year?
Oh my gosh, so much. So it's been a pretty crazy year. I think the biggest thing is that I've opened my own brokerage. I moved the team from working under a brokerage to now working in my own brokerage. So that was a huge endeavor. We've been working on really building out our systems a little bit more, getting things really ready to scale, recruiting, lots of training and coaching. And the biggest thing for me is just having fun, right? Loving what I do and who I do it with on a daily basis.
All right, Lisa, here's what everybody wants to know. I'm actually in a room full of real estate agents, masterminding, swapping ideas, and all that kind of stuff. So if you just look at the numbers, your growth is what most of us would refer to as insane, as like massive. And for some people, that's super inspiring and encouraging. Like, wow, look at the incredible growth, like from 8 to basically 500 in like 4 years. For some people, that's so far beyond them that it's like borderline discouraging. Okay. And that's not your fault because your growth is amazing. But from the outside looking in, people see that a lot of different ways. I think that it's exciting and encouraging. But another way that people can be encouraged by you is for you just to share a little bit about what are some of the hard lessons you've learned along the way to growth like that? What are some things where you thought it would be easier and it was harder, or you tried something and it just flat out didn't work, but you learned from it? Because I know from talking with you that so much of your growth is because of tenacity and never quitting and not giving up and learning, not failing, but learning your way forward. So what are some of those things that maybe didn't go perfectly, but were great learning opportunities?
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest, and this is something that I talk about a lot, and that I think most of us got into the real estate business to sell a lot of houses and make some money, right? Yeah. And I think one of the hardest transitions for me was actually becoming a team leader, which is so fascinating when you stop and think about it. My first year, so little known secret, right after that first Keeping It Real in 2017, I made some catastrophic mistakes on a leadership perspective. And I lost just about my entire team. They quit because I was a really bad leader. I didn't have the skills that I needed in order to be the person that I needed to be in order to lead people. And also kind of going hand in hand that year. Again, something most people don't really think about. I think one of the things that we talk about here in this industry is profitability. I made money in 2017, but I lost a lot of money. When you look at the two sides of the business, when you switch from being a solo agent to running a team, my money that I was making from my personal sales that year was actually going to running the team, because I made so many financial mistakes with the team that the team portion wasn't profitable. And if I had just sold houses, I would have made more money. Isn't that crazy?
Can I pause you right there, because I love you anyway, but I appreciate that how honest you are. And I think that's why so many people are drawn to you. And I just wanted to make sure that this whole episode wasn't just about your growth, which is super impressive. And I know you've been tinkering with profitability, but a lot of people don't admit that. So I think people do two different things usually when they land where you land. And a lot of people land there, right? I scaled up quickly and I became negative in regard to profitability, or the only money I made was my own production, or I had to sell more just to float the team. A lot of kind of context around what you just said. People do two things. A lot of people pull back, like, forget it. It's not worth the drama. I'm just going back to selling my own production and making the money I make from that. And they just settle for a forever grind or getting out of the business.
Right.
Or very few people do this, which I believe you're doing, is you push through and you learn from that and you become a better leader, right?
100%. Yeah.
I appreciate that you said, you had some growth as a leader. It wasn't about lead gen and conversion. I'm sure there's some lessons learned there too, but what, if you don't mind sharing, what were some of those lessons learned or some improvement that you could measure or notice that allowed you to keep moving forward?
Yeah. All right. So I think lessons learned. So I think you and I know each other fairly well, right? Through circles and conversations. I am a high driver, right? As evidenced by some of the growth, right? My work ethic is massive and my determination is equally as massive. And one of the toughest things for me to learn is that not everybody shares that, and that I can't take the expectations that I put on myself and put those same expectations on everybody else. It won't end well. That's a big part of it. I think learning how to communicate, like as basic as that sounds, my communication skills needed a complete redo. I was actually, what's so fascinating? I was talking to Jason, my sales manager, this morning while I was driving into work, and we were talking about, he had done a training with the team, and they were talking about making calls to expired listings, right?
Yeah.
And one of the biggest things that they were talking about was the lack of energy that was happening in the room. And I said, it's so fascinating, as he and I were kind of talking about all of that dynamic, and that energy that we used to sell to buyers and sellers, right? Like I have to use to sell to my team and my staff, and to come across not as the person who can get buried behind a computer, but as the person who's super committed to helping and not to just driving.
Yeah. Let me ask you if you would agree with this. I believe that when we sell a client on our services and they hire us, right, that's the first sale, but we have to resell them on trusting us and following our guidance throughout the process, right? And
yeah.
I think that parallels to team members or agents or staff or whatever, right? You hire them, and a lot of those of us that are driver type, high DI performer types, when I hire them, hand them a job description and run towards more growth or towards more sales.
Right.
And if we did that with our clients, we would know better. We would know that sign a client and run off to go get more, that wouldn't work. But we don't always recognize that as we scale, whether it be agents or staff or vendor partners or whatever that may be. So obviously it sounds like you're agreeing with that. So very, very cool.
Yeah, totally.
Well, I think we'll come back to more of the growth stuff, because I think there's people watching and listening live or recorded that are going to feed off of both ends of this. But let me go directly to what I know a lot of people are dying to know. To go to 492 transactions very quickly, and who knows where you're going to end up this year. I'll be fascinated to see what multiple of that number ends up being your total. What are the primary lead sources? What are your best inbound, outbound? What does that part of it look like?
Yeah. So I not as much as so much has changed from the first time that we ever did this, a lot has stayed the same. So online leads are still one of the biggest. It is the biggest part of my business. So that would encompass Realtor.com, Zillow, obviously, pay-per-click through Google and Bing, Facebook and Instagram would be the biggest bucket, kind of all in. Secondary would be that's on the buyer side. On the listing side, it's probably ironically going to also be those same inbound buyer leads turned into our biggest portion of seller clients.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Tied in with online generated home valuation leads through Google, Bing, Facebook, and Instagram.
Right.
Again, so not much has changed. My biggest weakness would still be leveraging past clients in Sphere. It's as much as I try to make, and I do make progress, right? It's slowly moving, but still have a lot of room to work there. Open houses, we're getting a little bit better at converting from open houses. We're working heavily this year on teaching the team to prospect, whether it's cold calling, expireds, and FSBOs, or even just working the 40,000 leads that we've got in our database.
Yeah. So it's fascinating in a lot of ways. You introed that really well. As much as things have changed, a lot of things have stayed the same. I think there's probably a lot of people listening that are already doing a lot of what you just said, but their results are nowhere near the same as yours, right? So there's some scale difference to that, I'm sure. But what are the big things you guys are focused on in regard to conversion, right? So that's kind of where everything's coming from. What are the expectations, accountability, standards, systems around making sure that those opportunities turn into closings and commissions and happy clients and that kind of deal?
Yeah, great question. So I ironically just posted some stuff about it in Facebook today. Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is still initial early follow-up, right? So I think the stat I posted was that, most sales, maybe more than 80% of sales happen after the 8th touch, somewhere between the 8th and 12th touch. For me, I kind of count a touch as a day, right? And most agents give up after 3 days. And that's the tough part, is making sure that we've got a scalable, repeatable, systematized, and fully documented follow-up campaign, right? So that we can make sure that we're hitting consumers in the way that really works. We've scaled way back from emails. Yeah. And one of the things that we always talk about with the team, and that I talk about whenever somebody asks me this question, is understanding that the purpose of a phone call is to get an appointment, but the purpose of the text message is to get the phone call to book the appointment, right? And everything is just designed to add value, and being different, and service over sales, right? So not you, that's a bad example, but Mary agent down the road from me can get the same lead, but she's just calling to check in, right? How many times do we hear agents say, hey, Todd, this is Lisa over at, Banana Real Estate, and I'm just calling to check in. I got your inquiry a couple days ago and I just want to check in. Well, everybody's calling to check in.
I would like to sign an agreement with you right now because of your generous check-in.
Right. What's the point, right?
Yeah. Lisa, what would you say to somebody, we get folks sometimes to say, hey, I'm a new agent and I just signed up and I'm getting PPC leads and I've got, maybe 20 a month, but I haven't seen any ROI, so I'm going to cancel. It's been, 2 or 3 months worth of generating leads.
Well, you have to understand, right? This is you have to understand where they are in the funnel, right? We all know about the funnel, and I think probably most people watching this kind of understand what a lead gen funnel is, right? And first, I say, you've got to give every single lead source at least 6 months, right? To be able to hone our own skills, right? And also to give the leads time to mature, right? In 2 months, I don't know anybody who's closing on a home which is giving me ROI. It's how often, like, they're the holy grail of real estate leads, where they come in for 123 Main Street. We show them 123 Main Street and they buy 123 Main Street. It almost never happens, but we love when it does.
What's the typical time frame to convert a PPC lead for you?
For us, honestly, it's about 12 to 18 months. Feels really weighty to me to ask somebody to leave a brokerage or a job where they're really happy and doing really well and ask them to trust me and my team of staff enough to take the leap and join us. But what I've learned is a couple things. First is not every agent is for my team, but
Right.
conversely, my team isn't for every agent, right? So even if they'd be a good fit for a team, like if you know me, right, I am the wackiest human being you will ever meet in your life. I that's the best way I can describe it, right? Like my office is confetti cannons and unicycles. It's choo-choos and fairy wings, right? We've got a giant shuffleboard table in the middle of the office, and I take pleasure in scaring people. Just like it's who I am, and that's not for everybody, right? But work hard, play hard. So for all the fun that goes into it, we also work insanely hard, and culture has become the thing. You know, at the end of the day, I don't care about the sales numbers, right? It's interesting to say, but I care about the culture that we've built. I care that the agents here support each other and the staff support the agents, and watching the collaboration and the teamwork. And, you know, when I can step out of my office and walk around the sales floor and see 3 or 4 agents sitting in an office together, working on a CMA or strategizing about how they can get the best possible outcome for one of our seller clients, like that's the stuff that makes me so excited at the end of the day. But that's not for every agent, right?
Right.
It's not for everyone.
So lots of questions there. Let's just stay on that topic for a minute. Where do most of your agents come from? So you referenced that some of them are experienced and they may come from a brokerage where they're successful or whatever. We'll stop there. Where do they come from?
So, you know, and I think most people know, I don't actively sell anymore. I sell a handful of homes a year to friends and family, but most of my time is actually spent recruiting. And one of the biggest mindset shifts for me was looking at it and saying, as a business owner, I have to look at agent recruiting the same way that we look at lead gen for buyers and sellers, right? And so we developed a funnel that works very similarly to lead gen for buyers and sellers for recruiting.
Yep.
So social media is a big one, right? I'm pretty public with who we are and what we do. I use WiseHire, like most people probably know. WiseHire is a very specific real estate recruiting platform. We use a company called Third Pool, which does some recruiting ads for us. I have a company that makes some cold calls through rosters for me. I make calls to co-brokes. You know, if an agent has done a deal with one of our agents, I pick up the phone and call.
Yep.
I use LinkedIn and I resume mine backwards for people from other sales industries, where there might be an overlap where we can help them get into real estate sales.
Yep.
I love connecting with real estate schools, right? And trying to give back. And I think that's who I am, right? I will give you anything that I do in my business. I will give you my scripts. I'll give you my follow-up procedures. Yep. I will give you anything. And at the end of the day, I hope that agents in my marketplace see that, right? And that they understand that, you know, maybe what their brokerage isn't giving them, we can help them accomplish here.
Yeah. So one of the questions from the room of agents I'm with right now that they wanted to ask you, you've answered partially, but it was, what does a normal day look like for you? So I'll ask it a little differently. Outside of recruiting, what are your primary responsibilities day in and day out?
Yep. So it's a great question. I still do lead gen. I'm still heavily involved in kind of managing the budget around lead gen. I do hiring for staff positions. I do recruiting for agent positions. I love coaching. And when I'm here and in the office, I love connecting one-on-one or in small groups with the agents. And helping move the agents from 10 homes a year to 20 homes a year to 40 homes a year.
Yeah.
love doing some small group trainings.
Yep.
And really kind of just getting to know everybody.
Yeah. Does that stuff happen kind of on the fly naturally, or is it scheduled, or how do you operate?
I hope that it always looks like it's on the fly, but I'm very regimented in my schedule. Little things, right? Like I try to get into the office by 8 a.m. most days. And honestly, sometimes earlier, sometimes a smidge later. And I've got activities that I do from 8 to 9, activities that I do from 9 to 10.
Yeah.
From 10 to 11, I try to be out on the sales floor, interacting with agents, not around work. It's around the personal stuff. And it progresses through the day in a very regimented way.
Okay. I'm sure we have some questions coming in, but I've got one or two more for you real quick, and then we'll volley it over and see what folks are thinking. Do you consider yourself a team or a brokerage? Meaning, obviously, you're a brokerage, you own the brokerage, but do you think of your agents as team members or as individual business owners who are still sort of under a bigger umbrella?
So that's a fascinating question, because even before the brokerage, I've always thought that they should be, that even if they work on a team, they should think of their business as their business. And it's one of the things that I coach to the most, right? And we use a whole bunch of stuff like CTE and that kind of stuff. And one of my big objectives is to get every single agent on the team or in the brokerage to treat their business like a business, understand the numbers, know where it's all going, know the financials.
Love that. Really cool. What do you got over there, Kevin?
Yeah, hopefully you guys can hear me.
Yep.
Lisa, what's your budget for your online ad spend, and what's your ROI?
So it varies by lead source, and if I'm completely honest, it varies by week, right? Like, so with such a big team, we're constantly kind of moving budgets around wherever shortfalls happened or wherever we need to push revenues in any given month. And I hesitate to share, not because I'm secretive, but because it can seem overwhelming, kind of like we talked about earlier. So the budget for lead gen is probably around $40,000 a month. And I don't want that to freak people out in any way, because if you remember back in 2017, it started at $500 a month. And I think that you can accomplish it at any different budget. ROI is so variable by lead source, right? It's a function of taking a look at the cost per lead with the cost of sale, with all the admin staff that goes into getting it. In general, I don't like to invest in lead sources if there's not going to be at least a 3x ROI. And not being in production means that I've got to manage budgets a little bit tighter, because we have a 50% cost of sale right off the top. The agents make 50-50, right? So that's a big nut.
Yeah. Another question. How big is your team?
So like I said, we must have cut out. I think we had talked about that at one point. So we're about 50 agents, give or take, and 12 staff members. And those staff members partly support the brokerage. Some are brokerage staff, like Dennis, who manages bookkeeping and compliance. And then there's some team-specific staff with transaction coordinators and management.
Very cool. Let me see if anyone sitting around with me has any questions. Anybody have anything for Lisa? Anyone? I know some of the questions before we went live were related to kind of the most influential things you do that benefit your team members, your agents, to help their production. So you talked about some small training and targeted training. What are the topics you feel are most essential for your agents to hear from you?
So I love training about personality types, because I think we can't treat every client the same way. Service over sales always, but understanding that if you call me on the phone, you get probably 10 seconds before my attention span runs out. Yep. And that's true of any driver, right? Versus the super expressive folks who want to talk about their kids. And if you don't find that commonality, you're not going to be able to connect. So talking about personality types with tonality and mirror and matching, those are some of my favorite things. Yep. It comes really intuitive for some people, but not so much for other people. And watching when it clicks, when somebody's like, oh my gosh, I get it. that's an amazing feeling.
That's super fun. I know at the unofficial Real Geeks conference last year, one of the most fascinating things that you talked about, or at least the feedback that was most excited about, one of the topics you covered was when brokerage-wide, team-wide, you guys actually reduced the number of leads that each agent was focusing on. And so, quick sidebar, we are doing the unofficial Real Geeks user conference again this year in October. So if folks are interested in checking that out, they can go to urguc.com, urguc.com, short for unofficial Real Geeks user conference. It's going to be super exciting. Lisa's going to join us again. We're going to have a bunch of other people. We might even get Kevin on stage again. It'll be great. I think he can juggle, or there might be like a laser harp or something going on. It'll be great. Anyway, check out that info there, urguc.com. But people were fascinated that you said we actually lowered the number of leads per agent and production went up. So is that still what you're seeing, brokerage wide, or any more feedback on that?
Yeah, it's actually been super fascinating. So I tinker with it every once in a while. Like I said, it's part of my role is kind of figuring out those balancing acts. And yeah, we definitely see conversion go up. And I think go back to kind of how we opened up, right? How many touches does it take? How many days of follow-up does it take to really get that average lead to convert? 8 to 12, right? And if I'm giving an agent an insane number of leads, we're going to burn them out, right? So being able to give them an amount that they can, and it's this delicate balance, right? We want to give them enough so that they earn a really great income and are productive and feel successful, but not give them so much that they just shut down and start just throwing leads away. And you want to see something really cool?
Yes.
Data has been my big thing this year. And this was my task for last week. It's cool. What it is it's a pie chart, and each different color on there is one of the agents on my team. And we did a correlation between their slice of the pie and their conversion to find that sweet spot. And the ironic part is the person who had that big blue wedge, one of my worst converters, one of the fewest number of deals.
What? Their calls, call time, contact?
The number of leads that we gave them in 2019. Isn't that crazy?
Most leads were one of your worst converters. That's fascinating.
Yeah, it's crazy to look at. So it varied from 1% of the team leads to one person had 12% of all leads that we generated in the team during 2019. And early data looks like the people who were the most productive took about an average 3%. Tough to put into perspective, but knowing that 1% to 12% and 3% seem to be the sweet spot, that's my geeking out part.
Wow.
So.
Yeah. Keep me posted on what you learn as you keep breaking that down. Good question here from one of the folks in the audience. What are you doing to maintain your growth trajectory personally, so that as a leader, you are continually able to turn and lead and coach and train and have personal growth room to provide room for your team and your staff?
That's a great question, because it's actually been my initiative this year.
Yeah.
So I have made my initiative this year. I'm taking 1 week every single month, and I'm going out of market and I'm visiting other folks in their offices.
Yeah.
And when I call them and ask if it's okay, I say, I don't even need you to entertain me. You don't even need to talk to me. I just want to sit on your sales floor and behind the scenes and watch everything. I want to see what you're doing. I want to see how your agents are interacting. I want to see how they're using their systems. I want to see what you're using. I have learned so much in the past 2 months. I've come back and my mind is insane.
Without naming names, unless you want to, what types of companies or businesses or teams are you wanting to see? Different sizes, different production, or are you going to new companies that are bigger than you, or what are you wanting to see?
All of the above, right? Because so again, go back to, I do a lot really well. I do some stuff okay. Actually, wait, I do some stuff really well. I do a lot okay. And I also have a lot where I don't do well. So, visiting smaller teams who are killing it with nurturing their SOI and running client parties was huge. Visiting medium-sized teams who have their systems and how they're using their CRM and keeping everything so uniform was amazing. Visiting larger teams to see how they're building out their management structure and what all of that looks like. And then I spent this week, I just got back yesterday from Tom Ferry's office out in California, looking at, he's got a great operation, not real estate specific, but very business specific, right? Yeah. And what can I learn from people not totally in the real estate space?
Yeah. Let me know when you're ready to come to Dallas, Fort Worth. We got a spot for you, and we will not entertain you.
May. I'm on my way to Texas in May, so we will connect.
All right.
Hey, Lisa, we got a lot of questions coming in about leads. So they want to know, what's your split of buyer leads versus seller leads? What are your top 3 lead sources? You named a lot of sources. They want to know what your top 3 are, and how many leads per agent?
Yep. All right. So leads per agent, I'm trying right now to aim for 20 to 30 leads per agent per month is kind of what I'm trying to hit. I'm still probably a little bit high, just as a function of I haven't totally gotten that totally figured out, because some of it's variable. In terms of top 3 lead sources, probably Realtor.com, Zillow, and pay-per-click. So Google and Bing, I kind of lump into the same category. But if you look at that as, I look at that overall as online leads. What was the other part of that?
Buyer lead versus seller lead.
So my business is still probably about 60% buyer business and 40% listing business. It's not necessarily due to, all right, another hard reality. I stepped out of production in listings too quickly, and the transfer of skill from me to my team was not adequate. And we had a really rough year where, all right, brutal honesty, our listing appointment to listing contract conversion was under 20%. That's horrific. Yes.
That is not fantastic, Lisa. I still love you. That is not excellent.
It's so bad. Forget not excellent. That's not okay.
No, we'll talk in May when you come to Texas. It'll be great.
So, we're working to get that up, right? I think we're nearing 50% conversion from listing appointment to listing contract signed. So we're moving in the right direction. But until I can get that fully dialed in, I've scaled back the spend on listing lead generation, just so that, we're doing the right things.
Let me ask you a couple questions on that, just because I think this is really, really valuable for someone of any team size, any production level. Do you feel like, what is more responsible for that? The ability to get the appointments that are set to show up and actually happen, or to get agents converting better when they're actually physically meeting with clients, potential clients?
For us, we were getting the appointments. We weren't getting the contract signed,
okay.
Right?
You were getting face-to-face. Conversion just was not good at all.
Yeah. So we were doing the right things in the office when we were sitting with the agents to book the appointments. And it literally was, myself and my management team stepped out too quickly, and we weren't shadowing enough. We weren't role playing enough, and we weren't, I wasn't aware of the numbers, right? I missed a pretty big thing in my business.
Thank you for saying that. I mean, really, you're doing fine, obviously. So nothing's burning down, but my guess is, even after us being very clear about this is not perfect, we're learning, this is where I made mistakes, I think people can just those numbers can make someone feel like garbage, right? And then when they hear that there's still areas that you're like borderline embarrassed about, it doesn't make anyone feel good that you have a problem, but it makes you human again for a lot of people, right? And so I think there are folks that are like, oh gosh, I feel a little bit better that someone with that level of production and growth and scale in such a short period of time is so open about, like, we've got some serious work to do. But I have a follow-up question, because I feel like I already know this answer. How excited are you to have discovered that number?
Like, legit insane. Well, first I wanted to vomit, right? When my coach pointed it out to me, because so I didn't even see it myself. Yeah. Like, my coach had to point it out to me. And I legit wanted to vomit, right. Which is a feeling I experience at least once a quarter. I'm finding like this is the cycle.
Leadership, super fun, right?
Yeah, no doubt. So after I got past that and I was able to, I got really upset with myself, right? Like I was like, how did I miss this? And what am I going to do to right the ship? But building it out and trying to, and seeing the small movements, right? So we didn't go from 17% to 50% overnight. Yeah. This has been a moving the needle over the course of probably 14 months.
Yeah.
Ish.
And the reason I asked the question the way I did is because people with the sickness that some of us have, and I'll put you in your own category, people with the ambition and the drive and the growth desire that you have, often you get told how fantastic you are and wonderful you are and brilliant you are and amazing you are. And it's harder to grow in that regard because people aren't helping you identify opportunities for growth. They're patting you on the back, telling you you've got everything figured out, and you know you don't. So when you find a challenge like that, when you find a gap like that, yes, you want to vomit and punch someone and throw something through the wall. And then when all that's over, I think that the real go-getters start to get excited because now you know how much opportunity you have to grow with opportunity that's already there. So I don't know how hundreds of appointments that is that you're like, dude, if we go from 17 to 27, here's the gap that we make up. If we go from 27 to 67, holy moly, we don't need any more leads. We don't need any more budget. Yeah, fantastic. Well done, sir. I'm happy.
Oh my God.
Nailed it. 2 points. That's 2 points are on the board for you. Love that. Very happy. But I know Kevin's enjoying it.
I love it. That's amazing.
Congratulations, team. That's right. Listen, you know you had that coming, right? I was sort of waiting, kind of like the Ellen DeGeneres show. Like, when are they going to try to get it? I saw someone walk by earlier, and I was like, this is the moment.
Oh, you saw it? I can't even see myself, so I didn't even see it.
Fantastic. So happy about that. Regardless of tech issues, that made the whole thing worth it. I have another question here, if it's okay. Several people in our little mastermind here have asked either 2 different ways to ask it. You answer it however you prefer. Like, what's your ultimate goal, or how big do you want to grow?
Super interesting question. How big do I want to grow is probably the easier one to answer. And my answer is always the same. I want to keep growing it at about the same rate that we've done until it's not fun anymore. Right? I'm sorry, my heart is still like in my throat.
So great.
I feel like I just went to the gym and ran a marathon without like actually running.
The best has been on the other side of your gigantic office, hearing you say, "I take joy in scaring." Imagine that was the moment they were like, "Find something loud, fast, hurry, get something." If they weren't already planning it for a week. Either way.
I'm sure they were. I'm legit sure they were.
I'm a fan.
So, for me, this business has given me so much opportunity. It's opened doors for me that I never thought would be opened, and has allowed me to meet some really, really amazing people along the way. And that's what I love, right? And I love, despite this, I love working with all of those fools. And I go to work and I'm excited. And I just love it. Right. They're making a video. They're probably going to post this all over some Facebook pages later. I can hear them editing the video right now.
It's the documentary of Lisa's fantastic life. Yeah, it'll be on TNT next Friday at 7 p.m.
No doubt. And so, I don't know that there's a defined number, right? My goal for this year, I want to get to 100 agents on the team. Unit count, I'm pushing for 1,000. If we can sell 1,000 homes this year. I shared just before we started, I was hoping that by the time we got on, I could tell you that we were at 100 homes sold so far this year, but we're at 98, right? So we're a little bit behind.
I mean, get better, Lisa. Do better.
I know. But, outside of that, I want to love what I do and who I do it with.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that's a great way to answer that question. Those questions are impossible to answer. So I can appreciate that that's about the impact and the joy that comes with it. We always say the only reason we ever want to grow is to have more impact, right? So as long as that's happening, we'll let you know when that changes. So it's, different answer, but sort of similar value there. Do we have anything else in the chat, Kevin? I know we've got one or two more over here.
Yeah, people are asking, do you have any scripting suggestions that help you stand out in a social media funnel? They can make it challenging to make a live connection. So I guess if you're talking to a lead that comes off of Facebook or something, how do you make a connection?
Connection and rapport, or connection and actually getting on the phone?
Yeah, well, I know you have a pretty cool technique for getting people on the phone through their social media profile, so you could talk about that. But I think mostly just, if you're speaking over the phone, how do you make a good connection over a script specifically for leads that come off of Facebook, for example?
Well, so I think it's the same no matter what, right? So the basic framework that we always use is LP Mama, right? And that's the basic script that works for buyers or sellers, because at the end of the day, that's the script that helps us kind of dial down. But one of the biggest things that any agent can do, no matter how long you've been in the business, no matter how many homes you've sold, is being true to yourself, right? So if you were to take that same phone call and go down LP Mama, right? Location, price, mortgage, motivation, all of that stuff as you go down, the biggest thing is to do it as you, right? And I do it as me, and Todd's going to do it as Todd. And if you care about people, that's what comes out at the end of the day, right? My goal when I'm talking to a buyer, a seller, an agent that I want to have join my team is to understand what their true motivations are and how I can help them accomplish their goals, not my goal, their goals, right? I guess that's probably the best way that I can say it, right? I mean, depending on how you open up the call is always a little bit different. But at the end of the day, after the initial opening, we're going in the same direction.
Yeah. You mentioned some recruiting technology that you used before. Other than a CRM or other than recruiting type stuff, are there any really effective technologies or new tools that your team is using that have been really effective lately?
So Slack has been really big for us. It's a really great tool for communication. It keeps us all on the same page, and it's insanely scalable.
Yep.
CTE is another product for tracking financials and conversations and appointments. We use it a lot with coaching and agents, but also to manage some budget stuff. Outside of that, we have started using Zoho for both transaction management. We're using the Zoho project side of it, kind of like Asana or Trello, to build out transaction management and kind of keep that systemized and scalable. And then I think that Real Geeks is our CRM. Those are the basics.
Great, love it. We love Slack as well, and use CTE as well, and have Real Geeks as our base CRM. So I'm making a couple of notes here on a couple of your recommendations. So we'll check those out. I'm always, whether I'm asking or being asked, I'm always taking notes. There's so much to gather here. Anything else on the chat over there, Kevin?
Yeah, a couple more questions. Are you getting any business coming from agent referrals from outside of your network, for example, networking?
Yes. Yeah, we get a lot of business from agent to agent referrals, and we send out a lot of business from agent to agent referrals. And it's, again, I think a big part of my role, to make those connections and to service them at a really high level when we do get them. So we love receiving referrals, but I also love handing them out and, knowing that, through whatever network we're using for referrals, that our clients are really well taken care of worldwide.
Are you seeing any impact of iBuyers in your area? Is that affecting your business at all?
So we don't have Zillow offers. We don't have Open Door. We don't have any of the big companies in our market yet. We do have a few of the, investor kind of pop-ups where they're buying substantially under market. It's not a huge impact. My gut says it's not going to really be a huge impact, and that it's one of those things where we as agents let it get into our head and kind of Right? It's never going to be the solution for every seller out there. So I don't pay it too much attention.
Yeah. Love it. What should I have asked you that you're excited about right now that other agents would be encouraged by or challenged by?
Oh, that's interesting. I don't know. We've covered so much. It feels like it was so broad, right? Like we went from recruiting to profitability to leads to scripts. Like we've been all over the place.
Yeah. So I mean, I would say in your quest to get to 1,000 transactions this year, what do you think is going to move the needle the most?
We need to, honestly, it goes back to our listing conversion, right? We're in a market where inventory is pretty tight right now based on our price point. And so getting our listing conversion up so that we're giving our agents and our buyers enough at bats and opportunities. I think it's going to be a strong market again this year, and just making sure that we're staying on top of that stuff and focusing on the basics. I think it's so easy as business owners and real estate professionals to chase the shiny objects and the squirrels as they come across.
Yep.
But it all comes down to the basics, right? This is something I said, I think in 2017 in our first thing together, which is real estate is math, right? And at the end of the day, when you focus on the basics and focus on the numbers of phone calls equal contacts, contacts equal appointments, appointments equal contracts, contracts equal closings. And if you can keep sight of those numbers, it's going to make us or break us.
Yeah, I love that. And I think if someone's watching right now, that applies at any scale, right? If
Of
you're
course,
a brand new agent and you have no leads yet and you have, 75 friends, the numbers are going to flesh themselves out there. Or if you're on your way to 1,000 or you're way beyond 1,000 transactions already, the numbers matter. I mean, I know Lisa has already said this, so I would add, relationships matter too, but the numbers are going to help you make projections and growth, goals and things like that. But the way you just said it, it's not all that complicated. It's still hard work, but it's fairly simple. So I love that. I think that's a great kind of wrap up thought, unless there's anything major over there on your end, Kevin.
Nope, I think it's a good time to wrap up, and thank you to our audience for working through the technical issues with us. Thank you, Todd, for co-hosting with me. It's great to have your perspective, and as always, thank you so much, Lisa, for getting on here. It's always inspiring to hear from you, and it's motivating, and it's really awesome to hear everything that you've accomplished, and I'm excited to see where you go from here. So,
thank you for having me.
All right.